We're not live yet, are we?
Yeah, we are live. It is March 30th, 2020, and Anthony and me, Glenn Hausman, are live. And today we got Jan Freitag of STR, Dave Eisen of HotStats, and Mike Taylor over at JD Power. Anthony, look at this. All right.
Wow, so I didn't know we had that. Congratulations.
Yeah. So you take a look at it again later. We'll talk about it. We'll refine it as time goes on. But I did want to say welcome to everybody, and thank you all for tuning in. And goodness gracious, I want to thank my good friends over at Bartech for seeing the value, Anthony, in what we are doing over here and going ahead and sponsoring us. So let me bring up their logo. We got their logo up real quick. Check this out. Love the guys over at Bartech. They've been really good fans of ours. They've been friendly with us in the past. I'd love for you to go check them out. Bartech's been at it as a matter of fact, for 30 years. Doing hotel minibar operations that have a technology solution that's really going to help you guys out there make more money. Why? Because they boost those in-room sales. And with the great system that they have, you don't need to have a body going in there and checking out every single day, opening those things, disturbing guests. No, you don't have to do that. You can, they've got a major app to help you lower expenses. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but make sure you check out bartech.com and check them out at info@bartech.com as well. Feeling pretty good to have a sponsor there, Anthony, right?
Yeah, I'm really feeling really good. Thank you, Bartech. I'm feeling really good about who we have on today because, in order to get back to using the technology, we have to have occupancy, and we have to have rate, and we have to have guests. So, the best person to talk to today, we have on the
boom,
forecast,
and here he is.
And there he is. And we're going to learn what they forecasted. So, Glenn, go ahead and do the introduction. But I'm really excited about this.
The man who needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce him anyway, Mr. Jan Freitag. Glad to have you back here today. The last time we had on this incredible SVP from STR, boy, we were still dealing with the shock of what was going on. Both of us were decidedly more low key. I feel like I've got my pet back, even though as I'm getting comfortable here in quarantine. The best part, I get to wear pajama bottoms every single day. So at least there's something positive going on in our lives. Plus,
good.
We've got Bartech here that is showing their love and support for us. So thanks again to the folks at Bartech. Jan, maybe you could give us a good understanding of what's happening right now with revenue, what's happening with occupancy, and all those other important benchmark statistics that we need to be thinking about right this very moment.
Hey, thanks, guys, for having me back. I appreciate the opportunity to spend a couple of minutes with you telling us the state of the union, the way we see it. So the latest data we have is obviously through March the 21st, RevPAR declined to by an unprecedented almost 70%. Weekly RevPAR was down almost 70%. Let that sink in. The worst performance we've ever recorded in 30 years. Unfortunately, I think that is actually not the bottom. I think we have another bad week coming when we release data on Wednesday night. I think it'll show a further decline. And then that's actually the RevPAR decline bottom.
Right.
And we're going to sort of be week over week over week. We're going to see, minus whatever worse is than minus, 80 or minus 90% RevPAR declines for a couple of weeks. The absolute occupancy last week stood at 30%. 1 in 3 rooms in the US was still occupied. Right. We sold 11 million guest rooms the week ending March the 21st, which then, Anthony and I were talking prior to us going live. So who is actually in these rooms?
Right.
What kind of traveler is traveling? Because obviously there's zero.
You don't even call them travelers, right?
Right. I'm not sure that's the right word.
Right.
So they are probably, if we look at highway locations, the occupancy is a little higher. Of course, we live in Amazon's world. Jeff Bezos has the supply chain. A lot of trucks are on the road, so those truckers need to stay somewhere. True. We probably have people who are first responders, doctors who work in hospitals who don't want to go home. They don't want to infect their families, and they sort of self-quarantine themselves in a hotel next to a hospital. Mm-hmm. We probably have some, we've heard this anecdotally, and I think the Wall Street Journal had an article about it, high net worth individuals saying, look, if I got to be sequestered, I might as well just be in a nice place, and go to like a 5-star resort, and when we look at the luxury room rate last week, it actually went up 10%.
Wow.
Now, part of it is mix shift. There are no groups, right? So which traditionally have lower rates.
Right.
These are all rack rate, rooms. But there are individuals who are saying, look, maybe this is the better way to sit this out. Is it an environment, as long as the hotel is open, where I can get, room service and look at a nice beach or whatever.
Right. So, Anthony, I'll say the good news is that people aren't lowering their rates, right? They're actually smart enough to know that if they just drop the bottom out of the rates, it's not going to drive any of that demand, and then they're just going to create a harder time for them coming out of this, right, Anthony?
Yeah, and we're actually going to talk about that on Facebook Live today, on my Facebook Live page with Jeremy Pinkerton, my partner and an incredible revenue manager. And what we saw last
3 p.m. today, 3 p.m. on Anthony Melcuri's Facebook fan page.
At Eastern Standard Time. And what we found last week, I went on and I was watching everything in New York, and the rates went ridiculous. The only thing that stayed up with the 5-star hotels that were still $1,000, but everything went from $75 to $150. I just checked prior to coming live, and we were doing it while we were in the studio behind the scenes, and the rates don't seem normal. They're not $400 or $500. They're not $300, but they're in the $180, $200 range, because, as you said, what's the point of lowering them? Because you're not increasing demand. The people that are going to come need to come, and they're going to pay what they need to pay. Don't take advantage of them, but at least have a rate that you can pay your bills. The union members in New York City need to be paid. They need to work, and they make a fair wage. And if we lower our rates, we're not going to be able to keep these hotels open.
Jan?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think if you say my room tonight is $10, you're not going to get the group traveler because groups are non-existent. You're not going to get the corporate traveler because they're not allowed to travel. Doesn't matter. Right. And you're not going to get the leisure traveler because they don't feel safe. So why say it's $10? I agree with Anthony. It's interesting to note, to watch and see, oh, look, maybe the room rates have slightly recovered, and you're using anecdotal data from New York City that we don't have yet. But I hear what you're saying. I think online it's clearly to see that revenue manager saying, look, it doesn't really matter what my rate is, so I might as well just leave it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So I got a question for you. And you gave us the overall nationwide statistics, but there are places like New York right now and places in California that seem to be reacting to this problem, at least from my point of view, differently than some places such as the Midwest, which seem to be a couple of weeks behind the severe measures that the coastal cities seem to have taken. So my guess is that there may be more people in hotels in XYZ state somewhere than perhaps in New York City. So maybe you could give us a little bit more perspective on some of the markets that have different nuances to them, so we can split the country down into several parts as opposed to just one big assumption.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're absolutely correct. Top 25 markets right now, group demand has basically evaporated. That doesn't exist. We saw numbers that I've never seen before. Group RevPAR, which is luxury and upper upscale properties that tell us group versus transient. Group RevPAR for the nation declined 97%. The group occupancy last week was 1%. And I think that's a false positive. I think that is rooms that were maybe prepaid, and somebody needs to throw in some cancellation fees or some no-show fees or something, so they had booked a room and checked the room in and then added that number, but I don't think there were any group travelers last week. So New York City occupancy 16.8%, San Francisco occupancy 16.4%. Yes, it's true. There are a lot of markets. We still see Florida spring break locations, that run occupancies in the 60s. That obviously is changing rapidly as, the younger generation that was partying 2 weeks ago realized, right, oh, I'm killing grandma, let me just stay home. But we are still seeing some markets where the occupancy it's not falling as rapidly. What I'm afraid of is that the lack of rapidly decelerating occupancies across the nation implies that our upturn is going to take us much, much, much longer. This is sort of a flip way to say it, but that's the way I think about it. Full hotels, to me, equal full hospitals.
Right.
That if people don't practice social distancing, physical distancing, that means they're not taking this seriously, which means a lot more people will get affected, which means we're not flattening the curve, and hospitals will continue to be overrun. So I think the occupancy in hotels, whatever it was, 30%, it's going to be lower this week. It's going to have to continue to come down further longer, for us to do our civic duties, so to speak, So, but yeah, you're absolutely right. The middle of the country is still doing relatively better. Outside the top 25 markets, what we call small town metros, the occupancies are still holding. And I wouldn't be surprised that in those areas, there are actually some hotels that sort of have long-term residents in them, people who stay 30 days and then get checked in, checked back out, and that base occupancy will stay. But you're absolutely correct. Right now, it's a story of top 25 versus everybody else.
Right. And if the occupancy rates go up in New York City in the next week or two, that's probably an indication that things are getting worse, because that means that hospitals are taking over hotels, the government's taking over hotels, and they're paying the occupancy and the rate for their members, and they're taking those rooms. So if it goes up in the next week or two, that's a bad sign. If it goes up in a month, then that's a good sign. So what were you projecting, just so I make sure this is clear in my mind, what were you projecting at the end of the year for RevPAR, and what are you projecting now? And then what are you projecting next year, percentage-wise increase?
So at the end of 2019 into 2020, at the Alice Hotel Investment Conference, Amanda Hite put our projection out. And it was, anyways, and then for this year, we're projecting 50% declines. I'm not telling you what our RevPAR forecast was at Alice. That's out the window.
Right, of course.
So it's 50% RevPAR decline this year. And then, let me just make sure I got the number correct. And then 63% RevPAR increase next year.
And that's a 63% increase from that lower base, not a 63% increase from last month.
Correct.
Right.
So let's talk absolute numbers, just to be absolutely clear. And
that's
Anthony
right.
said prior, to this to the podcast, like, look, you got to make this clear. And I want to just be very clear. So last year we ended at 66% occupancy, 2019. This year we're projecting just under 38%. Next year we're projecting just under 60%. So 66, just under 38, 60. That's the recovery. So there's some recovery, certainly. We absolutely expect room demand to come back as GDP growth increases, because GDP and room demand are connected at the hip. But let's talk about room rates. Last year, $131. This year, $112. Next year, $117. So ADR decline of 14% this year and up only 4% for next year. That's our forecast. And just fair disclosure, we're going to do two things.
Right.
We're going to revise our national forecast probably every 30 days as we get better data, because this is a good number, but it will get better is the wrong word, but it's going to get honed more in.
Right.
And the other thing is that historically, we have always been really, really good at forecasting demand, because demand and GDP, as I said, are connected, and our friends from tourism economics who help us put this stuff out have a very good understanding of demand and so demand and GDP growth together. ADR, we have traditionally been too aggressive. Mm-hmm. We've always said, oh, look, this is the time when the hotel industry, says, oh, highest occupancy ever, highest room demand ever. We now can drive rate. And we have traditionally been a little bit too aggressive. So 4% on top of a 14% decline doesn't sound too aggressive to me. Stay tuned.
And I'm looking at it as you're talking. The numbers that I'm concentrating on is, when will we get back to full employment in the hospitality industry, specifically the hotel and restaurant industry? And based on your numbers, it seems to be, I think, minimum a year. Would that be fair, or am I being?
So this is a little tricky, right? Because on the one hand, you're going to have pretty full hotels. Like, hotel room demand is going to come back. But your room rate growth, or your room rates, what you're actually making, is going to be so much subtracted from it, what it was in 2019. Are your workers willing to take a pay cut? or do you just say, look, I can only get every other one of you in here,
Right,
and still run these higher occupancies, or what else can we do?
And you close the bar, the restaurant. Right. Then you close the bar.
I mean,
restaurant.
you're the operations expert. You tell me, like, what
Right.
do you advise owners to do if you know that your hotels are going to get pretty full again, not as full as they were, but pretty full again, but your top line isn't driving as much revenue? So,
right.
I mean, throw that ball to you. So what do you tell owners?
Well, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to have debt, right? You're going to have more debt than you did going into this. No matter how much the bailout is, no matter how much help you get, you're going to have debt. You're going to have you're going to be probably having to rehire a lot of people because a lot of people are going to move on. So you're going to look at operations from ground zero. You're going to go, from the first employee all the way back up to the 50th employee or how many you need. And you're going to start losing operations. You're going to start losing room service. You're going to start losing the mini bar if you haven't lost it already. You're going to close the gift shop. You're going to cut your hours in the restaurant and the bar. So you're going to have to do that to survive long term. So there will be a reduction for, I think, quite a while in unemployment in the hospitality industry. And I hate to even say those words because people ask me, you think 30 days, 60 days, everybody be back? I don't think that's realistic, unfortunately. If we said hit the start button today and say, everybody, we're opening in Vegas again, we're opening in New York again, everything's back, I still think full employment would take you 3 to 6 months. And we're near doing that right now.
Yeah, so when we look at the China data, I said 2 weeks ago, oh, look, it looks like China occupancies are basically 8 weeks ahead of the US occupancy. I'm no longer saying that because the Chinese occupancy declined rapidly to single digits.
Right.
We don't have a national lockdown in place. We don't have a national curfew in place. So this is a state by state, city by city hodgepodge. So some cities said, it'll be fine. Some cities are a lot more stringent, some states are a lot more stringent. So those occupancies obviously going to see the hit. And that means then that overall the occupancy is not falling as quickly, which to me means that the recovery, when people say, oh, but China is, doing better. And absolutely it is. I don't want to take anything away from that. We look at our Chinese data and the occupancies are coming back slowly. It's sort of funny math, but it goes from 9% to 18%. It's
Right.
like, oh, look, it's 100% growth, So we're not as steep down, which means I think our recovery is going to take a lot longer, maybe 90 days, maybe longer. So 90 days will get us to 4th of July. And I talked to somebody else, who understands the hotel data very well, who said, well, that could be sort of the beginning of leisure travel returning, July 4th. That might be a little optimistic, specifically state by state, like Texas, it could be very different.
Right. I've got a couple of questions. Now, when you're thinking, Jan, about these numbers and where they're going to be a year from now, are you factoring in how many hotel rooms being open at that time? My biggest concern is that there's a lot of folks that might not be able to make it. There will be some hotel closures. Is that enough to affect any of the numbers on a national basis for all the other hotels that are out there? And was that factored in?
Yes, absolutely it was. So
all right, cool.
We suggested in our forecast that this year's supply is down 15%. There's not hotels, that's room nights available. And obviously that is going to be a lot more than 15%, 30% in April, fewer in May, fewer in June, fewer in July, and so forth. And yes, absolutely, there will be some unfortunate properties that just can't make it. Although I do talk to reporters all the time, from the general news media, who are saying, oh, so how many hotels are closing? And I said, well, hotels hardly ever close. They just get taken over by somebody else,
right?
Because the point of having a hotel is that the doors are open, So if you can't make your debt service, the bank takes it back and then turns immediately around to some debt fund who's like, yep, I can do it on 15 cents on the dollar, and that underwriting makes sense to me. So right. I'm not sure there's going to be this flood of closed properties. Could we see a large amount of owner changes?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, Anthony, what do you think?
I think there's a couple of big investors out there waiting, and they're waiting for the right opportunity, and they're going to come in hard, and they're going to come in strong, and you're going to see a lot of these little guys with 2 or 3 hotels get eaten up. That's what I think. They're going to make offers because even if they have several hotels that are doing okay, they're going to have maybe one or two hotels not doing well. And it's like, let me take this offer. Let me clear out my debt. Let me start over. Let me maybe retire. Let me go get a job, whatever it is. And so listen, in moments like this, there's opportunity. And if you're sitting on a lot of cash, which a lot of people are, all right, we had 10 years of tremendous growth. And it wasn't like in 2008, as you both know, 2008, people were in a lot different situation. There was a lot of funny money going on. This business in the last 10 years has been built on real money, and there's the real cash there. So I think those people with cash are holding it real tight. And once they see, they look at a STR report and they go, it looks like it's going, boom. I think that money's going to flood like Niagara Falls, in my opinion.
All right. Well, Jan, do you want to answer that? Then I got a couple of questions from our audience that they're dying to know. So go ahead.
Just the only other thing that I'm of two minds. I totally agree with you. And when I look at 2009, remember this whole extend and pretend, that the owners were like, I can't make my debt service. And the banks are like, well, I don't want to be an owner. So let me just hold my nose, look the other way. And in 90 days, we'll meet again. And so just don't worry about it for now, and then things sort of like there wasn't this flood of properties that were on the market because the banks were like, just pretend that things are going to be fine. So this may be different. Absolutely, because the cost of capital is zero.
Yeah. I didn't mean to interrupt you. And I'll be honest with you, I had two banks call me, get in touch with me, and asked me to look at two hotels, and I did about a day's worth of work on them, and I walked away from them and said, I can't do that right now for you, because there's no growth. 6 months from now, 3 months from now, maybe, but right now, I'm not willing to go in. Well, even if we do it virtual, from afar. I can't do anything for you. And I don't know where we're going to be in 30, 60, 90 days. Mm-hmm. So why take it away from somebody? Why take that away from that person? Let them sit on it. Give them a chance to come out of it. Yeah, they weren't good operators. That's why they're in this situation so quickly. Get it, understand. But give them a chance. I'm not going to come in here and start picking pieces apart. I'm just not going to do that. Not yet. Eventually we're going to have to do that because we're going to have to save some of these hotels and some of these jobs. Because when I turn around a hotel, I don't look at the owner. I don't look at making rich people richer. I'm not looking at making owners just keep their hotel open. I want to help them, but I want to keep housekeepers employed.
Right. Well, all that makes sense. But Jan, I gotta ask you from questions that are here. Number one, have you been considering what happens if this issue returns next winter? Number one, and number two, when you do see a comeback, are there particular categories of hotels, some segments, sectors, locations that you think have a better viability to return first than other areas?
So, two questions, right? What happens if this comes back? I truly hope that the global human ingenuity will, by next winter, have gotten us to a really fast test,
right?
Like swap, put it into a machine, read it, boom, and that we hopefully are way on our way to a vaccine. So I think I don't think this ever happened, right? That every single researcher in the world is trying to solve one problem.
Right.
Something good must be coming from that fairly quickly. So that's my hope as human being. Number two, what we see here in this scenario play out is hotels that were relying on groups got hit so hard. I'm saying national occupancy down 70%, luxury and upper upscale down 87%, in RevPAR because, they have such a large portion of meeting and groups. So if this happens again and people still don't feel safe, first thing to go is groups, second thing to go is corporate, third thing together with leisure. So what it means on the other side is who can be well positioned. I think, targeting the leisure traveler who is holed up at home, and is not spending money really on anything other than Amazon, they're like, well, I'm ready to go. So whenever I get the all clear, whenever the state says I'm all clear, or I get tested and I'm all good, and the hotel provides me, and this is critical, with a sense of safety and that they're cleaning the way they should, and Anthony could talk about that more knowledgeably than I can, then we're going to see this rush of leisure travelers. So I think leisure traveler coming into the rebound, I think is going to do.
What I'm concerned about is I agree with everything you just said, especially on the medical side. I think the quicker we get the test and vaccine, Hopefully we won't go as far down if we get there quickly. So if we get there in 30, 60 days, I think everything will rebound a lot quicker. So I agree with you. We need to get testing individually. I need to be able to go to Walgreens and get a test and be able to know if I'm okay. And I think then we'll get back to work quicker. Also, a leisure traveler is a 3-star traveler, a big percentage. So they're working paycheck to paycheck to make that vacation happen. A lot of those people, service people, are not going to travel when they come back because they're going to try to make their mortgage and not get thrown out of their house.
That's
so
right.
There's a huge percentage of leisure travelers that don't have disposable income. They save all year, 2 years for that trip. And now they're going to have to use those funds to basically keep themselves with a roof over their head and food in their belly. And so I think people are maybe underestimating that a little bit.
Totally fair.
Yeah, that's my biggest concern as well, Anthony. I know that I was planning a big trip this summer, and no matter what the resolution of this issue is, I don't feel like I'm going to be in the financial position in order to go ahead and do that. And even if I do have the money in the bank, which hopefully we'll have if we get some more great sponsors on our show. Thank you guys out there. I'll probably still be a little gun shy about pulling the trigger to take that vacation, but I do think I will rethink about how I'm going to travel. Maybe I'm not going to take my family to Japan like I was planning to this summer, but maybe I will get in the car and drive a few hours somewhere. Maybe maybe I'll go to the Roxbury, Anthony, right? And give them a little business, that sort of.
Absolutely. And I'm going to be on Facebook Live tonight with Roxbury, and I'll do more social media about that later. But I think what we're hearing is we're hearing more optimism. I think you're right, Glenn. Last week, we were literally in shock. If we go back and look at when we first interviewed you, I think if you looked at us, I would think that there was not one smile. Glenn wasn't cracking any stupid joke.
Right. They were just great jokes, no stupid ones.
We were really sober. And now I think we're still don't know, and we're still a little bit in shock, but I think people are breathing a little bit. I think the resources of every government is really on it. I know in New York, whether you're Republican or Democrat, I know when Cuomo gets on, most people are like, okay, that guy's showing leadership. I'm not looking at a lot of news outside of hotel news. And I'm talking to a couple of doctor friends of mine. But I think that we're at least okay. This is our new reality, and we're going to see what happens. So I think this week is a lot different than last week, and there's a little bit of optimism. Hopefully next week there'll be more optimism. But I think it comes down to those 2 points: testing and a vaccine. The quicker we get to those 2 things, the world gets better. The further we are away from that, the longer it's going to take to get this thing kickstarted.
Right. Yeah, so much is a psychological component of what is going on here, and the quicker we could get people to that state of being in a good place, I think the better it'll be. Jan, I'm feeling like we're coming to an end with you right now. What final thoughts do you have for us? Any words of inspiration before we let you go and bring in our next guest?
I think when the data comes out on Wednesday, it will be the worst weekly RevPAR numbers we've ever recorded ever. Worse than what we just saw. Mm-hmm. And that's where you look back in history, and say, what kind of quote can help us through this, And I'm going to, in my weekly webinar, use Churchill, This is not the end, not the beginning of the end. This is the end of the beginning, Like this is going to get better now.
Right.
Very, very slowly. But right now we're in the valley of death. This is going to be very, very bad for a long, long time, but it's going to get better. We look at the China data, it is slowly recovering.
Right. And one of the things we'll be doing is talking to Dave Eisen
you say long
about that data. Yeah, Anthony?
Real quick, when you say long time, if I'm sitting there and I own a hotel and I'm a revenue manager or director of sales, you just get the living crap out of me. How long is a long time in your estimation?
I mean, I'm thinking that Q2 is done. Like I would have plans in place for almost zero revenue for 12 weeks.
Okay, yeah. I think that's fair, and I think people.
I think that's fair and reasonable.
And I think and that's realistic. And as long as it's not a year and a half, I think when you said long time, that kind of scared me as
sorry.
well too. But people got to understand you work within, a 30, 60, 90-day budget.
Right.
All right.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Jan, how can we find you guys? I know you're doing those weekly webinars. I'd love for people to be able to tune into them to gain some of the confidence that comes with knowledge and information. How can we find you? How can they connect with you?
Check out str.com. We have a COVID-19 landing page. All our webinars, global, we have sign up pages there. The one for this Thursday, the 3,000 seats filled up in an hour and a half. So we're adding another one.
Wow.
Hopefully 6,000 is enough. If not, we'll figure out a different way to do it. But yeah, we absolutely, and of course they're all recorded. Like, it's not that what I'm doing is live is so much more important than the recording. Like, the recording is right there. So the recording is 4 hours later. It's the same data info, obviously. str.com, COVID-19 landing page.
Right.
Yeah, and I think if you're not doing anything, if you're in the hotel business and you're in real estate and you're not doing anything, you want to kind of take a break. At least do one thing. Listen to that guy, and listen to that information into your colleagues, because we need you. There's two tracks right now. It's the healthcare track, which is obviously the priority, and then there's the economic track, which is a very, very close second in a lot of ways. And I know you're making me feel better every time I speak to you, because I'm getting real data and I'm getting real information, and then I'm going and telling everybody I know and everything else I do on the, besides this, and giving them that information. And I know it's making people feel a lot better. So thank you very much.
Good.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Guys.
And Jan, we promise to have you back here as soon as you're ready with some more great information. I love having you here. Thanks again. And we'll speak to you real soon. All right. I want to bring in our next guest, Mr. Dave Eisen. Dave, you gotta start your volume. You got to start your other things. But while we're waiting for Dave to turn that stuff on, I do want to remind you all that BarTech is here to help you with all of your mini bar needs. And to be honest with you guys, I love grabbing that beer out of the fridge. I love doing that sort of stuff. And so will your customers. Of course, when they come back to your hotel, they'll be doing that for you. But what I really like, Anthony, and maybe you like this too, but I love that it's all on a computer system where it only says if someone's removed an item, so that way you don't have to bother your customers and that are staying in the hotel, and you can keep those expenses down.
When we come back, and we will come back, and we will be stronger better than ever.
Yep.
One, it's convenient, and two, it saves labor. I hate to say that on one hand, because you don't want to get rid of labor. On the other hand, most people have, and BarTech is a good solution. So who's our next guest, my friend?
All right, Dave Eisen. Dave, turn on your stuff, man.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
I can hear you, but we can't see you, buddy.
I can't.
I wish I could. I'm trying to go through my preferences, and it's not giving me the option to.
On the bottom of your screen, does it say? Ooh, we lost him. On the bottom of the screen, does it say start cam, stop cam? Start cam, stop cam at the bottom?
Yeah, I have that. Hey, I have a anyway. So
what's that?
I have a face for radio anyway. So
that's all right. So we're gonna
I'll
talk
try to do it, but I'll try to figure it out.
No, I love it. And what I really like about this live format, Anthony, is we've got to stay on our toes the entire time. I'm throwing some new wrinkles in. I've got a new camera angle here today that I'm still playing with. I got some of the new technology going. And as we continue to refine the show, we're going to make that happen. Let's see if we can get Dave back one more time. If not, I think we'll just probably make up some statistics. Dave.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right.
I'm just going to stay. I'm just going to
stay on the audio. Yeah. All right. So we're going to do audio only with Dave Eisen here. Dave Eisen with HotStats. Maybe you could tell us real quickly what HotStats is for those of folks that still refuse to understand what a cool company you work for.
Sure. Absolutely. And thank you for having me on, Glenn, first of all. And Anthony, it's nice to meet you. I've been a big fan of yours for a while now on your past shows. So it's nice to meet with you, obviously under kind of these dire circumstances. But
Anthony was just telling me what a big Dave Eisen fan he was. So this
I wish he could see me, So maybe when I walk down the street, well, I don't live in New York anymore, so he wouldn't be able to see me, but but basically, Glenn, HotStats, we're a monthly profit and loss data benchmarking company. So we're receiving hotel P&Ls on a monthly basis. And then we're able to track revenue, expense, profitability via our partner data. And then we offer external benchmarking, internal benchmarking to the industry to see really how hotels are performing. It's really about operational performance, all the way down to GOP. And obviously,
so what are you
for an
hearing
owner
right
in this
now?
day and age. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
What do owners say? No, I just want to know. I want to kind of cut to the chase. And what are owners saying right now?
It's
What
bad,
are they
man.
telling you? What are you hearing?
I spoke with
Well, we don't. Right.
I spoke with an operator owner the other day, and his line to me, which I thought was interesting, was he said, "I'm buried in the middle of absolutely no business." Right. So in a one night, our industry is a one night rental business, right? So the calendar, the day 24 hours are up, the next day, and you have no business coming in. People are canceling. We're hearing it's not good right now. And that's basically just the short of it right now. It's not a really good story right now. Obviously, you spoke with Jan. It's going to take some months to get it back, even into the peak levels that were before. But as you know, Glenn, speaking with you, the industries, some of those KPIs are weakening as it was anyway. We were kind of at the forecasts were flat to a little bit up in RevPAR, but now there's no guidance anymore. You can't budget for this. It's all about just benchmarking and looking at what we have now. So, So
what are you doing? What are you doing to help those hotel owners get through this right now? Because obviously there's not a lot, on a P&L. There's not a lot that you can really provide for them. So what are you doing to support them? Like, what kind of things can what can you help them with to get them through this?
Well, I think it's just so our data comes out monthly. So right now we have February data. Our March data will come out toward the end of April, and that's really going to show kind of the devastation we saw here in the U.S. Obviously, our data already shows for what happened in Asia and China, where China GoPAR was down 216%, year over year. Total Asia was down 57%. I think right now, and as you know, being a past GM, Anthony, hoteliers, they're in a flex position. So basically, when you're having that kind of revenue shortfall, how well can you contain your costs, right? Obviously, you'd rather be in a flow-through position where you have a revenue surplus. So it's really
your only costs are fixed costs. The only cost you have is electric and mortgage, and you don't really have any other costs unless you have one housekeeper and one front desk agent, and the housekeeper's probably checking people in at this point.
Right.
So what's your advice to an owner with 3-4 hotels, no revenue, maybe a very skeleton crew? What are the kind of rebates or what are the kind of things he can do with his utility companies or other purveyors to kind of help his bottom line?
Well, that's a good question. You'd probably be better to answer that than I would, as maybe more of the statistician. But I think you have to. I mean, in terms of speaking with your suppliers and asking for those, delays in payments, that kind of thing. I think this is an industry, right, that's really pretty a generous business. It's hospitality, so it's just like asking your landlord, say, first of the month the rent is due. Can you give a little bit more time on that? I think, in getting back to the supply chains, I think one of the things that we're missing here in all this, a lot of it, is that we talk about the hotels and how badly they're taking a hit, but obviously the supply chain as well, right? Suppliers are feeling the brunt of this as well. There are uplifting stories out there. There was one company, a linen company, that obviously their business dried up overnight. They're not getting orders now. Instead of making table skirts, they're making surgical masks. It's a company out of Houston. It was in the Washington Post. Right. So I don't know what you can do. You have to hold on. You have to talk to your lenders, right? I mean, that's the other thing we talked about. I think I actually asked you about that on the show last week about lenders and what you can do there. So I think this is a person to person business, and I think you have to talk with your suppliers, talk to your lenders, and figure it out as best as you can. Because when there's no revenue coming in and cash flow has been turned off, what can you do?
Right. Well, it sure has been that way. But Dave, I wanted to get a little bit of good news, because Asia seems to be a little bit ahead of us for what's going on. They hit the depths of this quicker than we did, and they seem to be moving more out of this. Any observations that you have on what's going on in Asia right now that might help us see a little bit of light at the end of this tunnel? And then shortly, we're going to have on Mike Taylor from JD Power to talk about traveler sentiment and stuff. So go for it, Dave.
So I'm excited to see what our March. I mean, excited might not be the word, but it'll be interesting to see what our March data says, because as I said before, February was just triple digit drops in GoPar, right? It'll be interesting to see what March looks like when that data comes out, and hopefully you'll have me back then, and maybe my camera will work at that point. But I think we're even hearing from some of these brands out here. I think Oyo actually came out and said their room bookings were actually on an upswing right now, right? So that's coming back a little bit.
Excellent.
I think it just is. It's how well talking. Jan, you were talking before about how many months it's going to take, years to get back to kind of those peaks. But I think overall, and obviously we've never been at a point like this. 9/11, the global recession, people do have a short memory, right? And hopefully, once this all stuff comes through and we get through it all, people will be back to traveling. I mean, the issue is that travel is such a human experience, right? It's a very personal thing, very person to person. You get in an airplane, you're rubbing up shoulders with a guy right next to you. Same at hotels. It's that interaction. So I think people have to get over that, right? I mean, we're obviously at an inflection point, I think, in humanity. It's going to take time, but I think, we'll see our data comes out in March. Hopefully there's better stories there. I think there'll still be, obviously it'll be negative, I think, but obviously hopefully that negative will be more positive, if that makes sense.
Well, I was watching this documentary about the future, and it looks like people are still going to that Westworld amusement park. So it bodes well for us in the future that people are going to travel.
Good show. I tried to get through it, but it's tough. I got into the second season.
Dude, I gave up on the second season. I started watching the third season, and we're a little bit wary. But who knows? Who cares? All it knows is that people will travel. I think that the human spirit is we need to get out there. We need to travel. And David, you're starting to see hints of that coming back in Asia. But what realistically, based on the data that you're seeing and all of your years in the business, where do you think this is all going to head to for the United States in terms of a timeline?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of a timeline, I think obviously the interesting thing was, February data for U.S., wasn't really all that bad, right? It was flat to a little bit down in growth. I think GoPar for the U.S., total U.S. was minus 0.6% year over year, which any hotelier right now would take that any day for the rest of the months.
Right.
I think we're going to see the same kind of precipitous drops that we saw in Asia. I'm not really a prognosticator. I don't really wear that hat. It's not what we do. We're more about what the data looks like now and how to use that. But I think obviously those it's going to take months and months to get it back. It's really going to be when people just feel that they can start traveling again from a leisure perspective, taking their families on vacations.
Right.
And then corporate, when companies say, okay, obviously, we have our CEO. Our CEO lives in London. He's not coming in to visit me in DC anytime soon, right? So that corporate kind of channel has been turned off. And once that spigot gets turned back on, I think it just depends on how long that's going to take people to
right.
do that. So,
Anthony, you know what's interesting to me, and I'd love for you to comment on this one. I get the feeling that the amount that each individual human being spend is going to take on a lot more importance when we get to this new era that we're going to be entering in than it was here.
Well, I think, we've heard over our lifespan that depression era thinking, and depression era thinking is, we had money saved, the stock market was doing well, and all of a sudden we got kicked in the knees. So we're going to be a little bit more frugal. We're going to be a little bit more considerate of how we spend our money. I think coming out of this, there's friends that I see are working, a lot of government jobs working, and a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of business people aren't working. And I think a lot of people, especially the 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds, that can come out of this, and they're going to be a little bit more thoughtful in the way they spend their money. And I don't think that's going to be a short term. I think it's going to be a long term. I think we're going to get back to full growth. I think the economy is going to do great, and I think we're within a year, hopefully we'll really see a big turnaround. With that said, I think people are going to be just a little bit more conservative overall with the way they spend their money. So the value of a hotel. So when you're going to a hotel, whether it be a 5-star hotel, 4-star hotel, you're going to want more value for your money. You're going to want more service for your money, because people aren't going to spend their money as quickly as they did before. Because I think a lot of people, especially a lot of people that were doing well, did not see this coming, and they are absolutely shocked. And I don't think that's going to go away for a while. I think that feeling is going to be there for a long time.
Yep, you're absolutely right. Dave, I lost you. Are you back now, by any chance?
I'm here. I should be.
Yeah, you are. How about wrapping this all up into a nice little bow for us before we let you go today?
Yeah, I mean, back to Anthony's point. I mean, there's not a lot of you can do. You know, obviously your variable costs will be going down in payroll. We're seeing obviously lots of gains in payroll because no one's getting all the furloughs and layoffs right now. So I think it's obviously in terms of fixed costs is looking at talking with your lenders and that kind of thing and getting those extensions. I think everyone wants to get through this together, and hopefully down the road everything gets back. People start traveling again. But and the last thing I'll say to this is, and I think Anthony, you're probably good friends with Tom Colicchio in New York, right? He wrote a good piece.
No.
If you read about
I met him once. I don't know him. I met him once.
Okay. Well, anyway, obviously the restaurant business and the hospitality business or hotel business are very much, similar in that regard. I think obviously the profit margins are a little bit lower in the restaurant business, but I think we have to, rethink, and I want to make this political statement, but rethink government and what its job is, right? I mean, everyone talks about it. Capitalism got us into this, and then what socialism is getting us out of it. So, I think there has to be this kind of rethinking, grease the skids again on national health care, because as you see right now, what's happened is that a lot of these, and when we talk about this is a small business industry. All our friends at AHOA, I mean, they own 60% of the hotels in the U.S. So I think there's got to be talk about that as we get through here in the role of government. So I'll leave it at that.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Glenn. As you said, you like live shows, so I have a situation I got to go deal with. Everything's fine, but I got to deal with it right now. So I'll let you take our next guest, and when I'm finished dealing with that situation, I will come back. So let me go deal with that.
Beautiful.
And I'll be back in a few minutes.
All right, I'll remove you from the stream. Hey, Mike Taylor, JD Power. You are on live.
Hey, how are you guys?
We're doing all right. Anthony said he'd be right back. He's got a quick situation. That's why we love doing the live stuff here, because you never know what's going to happen. But before we get into this, Mike, the one thing I do know what's going to happen is if you guys check out bartech.com, you're going to love them. Thanks for sponsoring us. I really appreciate it. As we try to figure out this new normal, and Mike Taylor figuring out this new normal, we got a survey here, hot off the presses from you guys taken a couple of weeks ago. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what the survey is and why it's relevant today?
Well, it's basically what we call a pulse survey. So that's a very short survey taken very quick and dirty, or so, just to kind of get an idea of what is actually happening in the marketplace. And as of the time that this was, I got a new one that just came out to me like 5 minutes ago. So I'll give you some new stuff on top of this. But this one was done on March 12th and March 13th. And I'm going to, sorry, because it's a live show, I'm doing all these different screens.
Yeah, no, that's all good. And I think everybody kind of is cool with that kind of thing too. Because I'm monitoring a conversations over here on our web, on the LinkedIn Live link. I'm trying to talk to you guys. I got a camera up here. I don't know what's going on. So you're doing great.
Well, so we surveyed 1,600 people, just kind of a random sample of U.S. people, and we asked them if they were planning to take a trip. And this was again on March 12th and 13th. And the upshot of it was a little over half, 54, were planning to travel in the next 6 months. So over half, whereas 73% of leisure travelers said they were planning to travel in the next 6 months versus 26% of business travelers. Now, what that really means, the way I interpret that particular number is, it's not that the leisure traveler is so much more optimistic than the business traveler. It's actually that the leisure traveler probably gets to pick and choose when they think it's safe. And your previous callers were talking about, when are we going to get back to that feeling of safety? When are we going to get this consumer confidence back? Right. Mm-hmm. And, we have a lot of previous events. 9/11 is analogous, has some differences, and we can talk about that as we go through this segment. But at least as of the 12th and 13th, people were very optimistic. Now, the one I just got, and I was just looking at it, just as I was sitting in your green room, your
It's so fancy, right?
It is very nice. Yeah, I like the upholstery is really good over here.
Wait until you see the free bathrobe that comes with it.
So this is we asked people how stressed they were on basically a 6-point scale from extremely stressed to not stressed at all. And 7% of the population said they weren't stressed at all about COVID. 12% said they were extremely stressed, and 20% said they were very stressed. So the top two boxes, basically a third of the people said they were relatively stressed about it. And the people in the middle Atlantic states were the most stressed by a pretty good margin.
Hello.
So they had the top.
My fellow mid-Atlantic states.
I'm in Connecticut as well. So my wife's in the medical industry, and so our big trip this weekend because we're kind of on this lockdown was to travel an hour away to get some N95 masks that someone had. So that was like my grand day out yesterday up to Danbury, Connecticut.
Wow.
But the people in the middle of the Atlantic States, I know. So the people in the middle of the Atlantic States are the most stressed out. They're not really worried about paying their bills.
Right.
And again, I'm just trying to read.
You're describing me right now because it still feels very, very otherworldly.
Right.
I'm stressed out about it, but the next bill cycle hasn't hit yet. So we haven't been hit with that right in our faces yet.
Yeah. So, we asked people what they thought their financial situation would be in the next 2 months. Mm-hmm. And 13% said it's going to be much worse. 33% said somewhat worse. And 39% said no change whatsoever. And actually 5% said much better. I guess those are the people selling short or something like that.
Right.
So basically the takeaway there is around a little over half, just over half are expecting no change in their stress levels and some of them expect to get a little bit better. So there's a little bit of hope on the horizon. These data right here are only 4 days old. Mm-hmm. So it's taking into account a lot of the lockdown stuff and some of the recent COVID news that we've all been inundated with. And you're right, it does seem very surreal. I know you and I are probably old enough to remember 9/11.
Yeah.
I was doing a webinar internally with some of our clients last week or the week before. Seems to run together. Mm-hmm. And I was mentioning what it was like because I was at JD Power in the airline rental car business with JD Power back on 9/11. In fact, everybody has their own personal story. I was actually flying from
me too.
Montreal to Los Angeles, and when they turned the plane around, and my biggest client was the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey, and I still have my 24-hour passes, permanent passes for the World Trade Centers way back when.
Right.
But anyway, there is this feeling of surreal situation because this just happened so fast. It did come out of the blue, despite the fact that we knew there was infections going on in China in October, November, December, and
but
January.
It feels so far away and remote and almost not real, right?
And that's exactly how people think of it. Like Ebola happened in Africa and didn't really touch anybody here in North America and South America, those kinds of things. So there is that. But I wanted to talk about, if you don't mind, the differences and similarities between this and 9/11.
Yes.
So 9/11 was, of course, quite literally out of the blue. If you remember, that was quite a nice morning out here on the East Coast that actually happened. And we did shut down the air traffic control system for a few days. And then there were a bunch of people stranded, a lot of people being fed and sheltered. You were one of them. I actually drove a car from Montreal, Canada, down to the New York area here to come back home to Connecticut that day. But what happened was that there was an immediate reset of the travel experience. People got back on planes about 5 days later, if I remember correctly. It might have been longer, it might have been a day shorter than that. And they all got home safely, and no planes came out of the sky or ran into buildings. So there was kind of a proof of concept that nothing bad was going to happen or did happen. And that was quite a bit of reassurance to the traveling public. Mm-hmm. Now, the difference here is that this is something that is an invisible thing, and it has a lag to it of a week or two where you maybe feel fine for a week or two, and then you develop symptoms. So people are going to be a little more trepidatious or have some more trepidation, I guess is the correct word.
Correct.
This time around than last time around. Now, if you remember, I remember distinctly the first few times I got on an aircraft post 9/11. Anytime anybody stood up or went towards the front of the cabin,
Right.
That was, you could see people tense, including myself. Like, okay, do I need to go into, fight or flight response here?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to happen every time somebody coughs or sneezes, quite literally on
Yeah, I
aircraft
agree.
when we reset this thing. And, as we get through this, as we roll through the experience, human nature, human behavior being what it is they're going to get used to the fact that, you know what, nothing's happened. Nothing bad has happened in weeks or months or something like that. And that's when the confidence comes back.
Right.
One of the questions that someone asked me on one of our webinars last week is, well, when can we get back to our brand advertising? When can we talk about how wonderful our airline is or how great our experience is in the rental car? And I said, well, the rule of thumb used to be that when late night comics would start making jokes about it, then everybody's comfortable and this is well up in the past. But I don't think that really holds true anymore. Late night comics just, they go for the clapter, and try to make political points left and right, I might add.
I agree.
And that may be a little bit, that rule of thumb has gone out the window. But there
First of all, great phrase, clapter. I don't want to let that go unnoticed.
Yeah. So, there's going to come a time when we've regained that confidence. And, the other thing that I've been saying incessantly and day in, day out to all of our clients has been all epidemics end, all of them. And this one will end as well. We just have to be in the middle of it.
Right.
And we haven't reached that peak. We haven't seen anything come down yet. We just see that number climbing every day, driven by a couple of different things, as I'm sure your other guests have talked about. My children who are in their 20s were saying, gee, Dad, how can China have fewer cases of COVID than the United States has? And that's simply driven by testing. If you have more tests to give, then you can inflate that numerator or that denominator faster than China. And China just, for all intents and purposes, kicked the Western media out. So we don't really know what's going on there. We have to take the word of the Chinese government. And I would take that with a very large grain of salt at this point. So, but there is going to come a time when this is all over with. And that's what we've been trying to tell our clients. And there's, several things that we see in this whole thing. I'm sorry to go on. If you want to stop me.
I think you're on a
big
roll,
monologue
man.
I've got going
I
here.
freaking love it. And it's a lot less talking I have to do.
Okay.
So it's great. But I do have some points I want to make when you're done. Please
So,
continue.
as we go into this recovery period, what are going to be the things that corporations, companies, travel suppliers need to do? And the first thing is to prioritize people over process.
Right.
And they really have to recognize that these are individuals who are stepping into an unknown, arena now. Am I going to get something infection if I lean over and take some water out of a cooler? Am I going to be able to touch a touch screen? Is COVID living on the ticket that I have or
That's right.
on the screen that I'm going to touch? And we tell our clients that you've got to have a little bit of empathy with those people as human beings, not necessarily as numbers. And that's difficult for the travel, suppliers these days, because we've just been so inundated with the high load factors, the percentage of seats that are filled on the airlines, the overloading of airports themselves, just the sheer demand for travel has never been better, never been greater than in the entire history of the world. And now it's gone down to almost zero. And it's going to be jumping back up with those brave souls. And they're just going to get people going to be scared. And you've got to communicate to them that we have taken these steps. Right. And as the other thing we tell our clients is, I'm sure you see this in your inbox, if your personal mail and your business mail, our CEO's response to the coronavirus crisis. Here's our coronavirus information. I doubt that even a small percentage of those emails get answered because people are not interested in what your CEO really feels about the corona crisis. I'm sure they're human beings. They're going to communicate something very positive. But there's a reason why listicles work and why they're so cluttered, in those clickbait things. Here are the 5 things we're going to do to keep our customers safe.
Looking at you, BuzzFeed. Right, exactly.
Those things will get opened because people know I'm going to learn the 5 things that this company is doing, whether you're Avis Rental Car, American Airlines, JFK, or anyone else in the or Hyatt. Here are the 5 things we're making sure that are being done. And then when we had these initial kind of ramp up, some of the data that we showed, that people had a really good understanding that, hey, extra cleaning is going on, extra sanitation is going on. But then they got a little bit worried as to, well, what about the indoor air? How is the hotel, making sure that COVID isn't going through, like the Legionnaire's disease did through several hotels out here on the East Coast many, many years ago. And I would also point out that we've all but forgotten about Legionnaire's disease, and that killed people, at a stroke. And, again, they were old and mostly elderly. Legionnaires were the first group that really got hit by that. But that was a bacterial infection that was hanging out in the air processing plants of certain hotels. So if they're looking for, as we go through this crisis, okay, you're cleaning all these things, you're wiping down all these surfaces, what else are you doing to make sure that COVID isn't going to be breathed into my lungs? And now, if you can do that, great, but you've got to be very concrete in your response that kind of information, you're doing it, and you can prove that you're doing it.
So, Michael, let me
restore confidence.
Let us tie that back into the point you were making about advertising. I want to welcome back Anthony to the show as well. But you were talking about how they need to change how they're advertising. This weekend, while I was allowing myself to lay on the couch and process all that's been going on, I was staring at some dumb television shows. And one of the common themes that I noticed is all of the restaurants seem to have gauged their advertising towards the new phenomenon that's happening. Domino's in particular, touch-free delivery. They'll leave it out front of your door for you and let you know when it's there so you can come out. Or some family specials that Subway is doing so you don't have to go into the restaurants. I think that if you were to take that approach and do what you're talking about with these listicles about the hotel brands, here's how our brands are helping you to be confident in your travel, I think that might go a long way to help.
You might remember that prior to my being at JD Power, which was quite a while ago these days, I was in the advertising testing business. And the key thing for advertising messaging is, are you telling me something that's meaningful and persuasive? If it's not meaningful to me, you're wasting my time. I'm not going to listen to you. I'm not going to remember your commercial. I don't care how funny it is. But if it's something that's persuasive and meaningful to me, that's the kind of thing you need to hit. And I think this touch-free, concept, which is a nice turn of phrase, and that's what people want to see, is it touch-free? I'm not actually I'm not touching another person. I'm not sharing any kind of common air that might, infect myself. So that's a great way of doing it.
And I think, if you look at it from a perspective of every single person, whether you're the person running Domino's or you're the person ordering the pizza, we're all thinking the same thing for our families and for ourselves. So if you look at it from that perspective, what is my advertising saying? So put yourself on the couch, watch your ad, and say, if I'm going to order Domino's, I'm the CEO. If I'm going to order, am I protecting my family? Am I protecting myself? Does it make sense? And I think a lot of times you see commercials on TV. I mean, how many times have you said to yourself, it's like, how did that commercial get past the CEO? Like how, right? I mean, how many times have you said that? Like, did anybody watch this commercial before they put it on air? And I think whether it be a hotel or whether it be a major company advertising right now is, will that, to use your word, persuasive, will that ad persuade me to listen to you? Because as you were saying, there many CEOs have sent out lots and lots of COVID-19 information. I've opened zero. Now, if it said the top five things JFK is doing, I'd like to know that, because I have some friends running through JFK right now having to get on flights because of their job. I'd like to be able to give them that information.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. The more specific you can be. And the other thing we've learned in our JD Power research is that, technology has to have a human touch to it. We see that highly rated companies that do a great job using the technology, whether it be an app or a website, they succeed more often when they use plain language. So there's certain airlines that do a better job of using that plain language. United Airlines is actually one of them.
I like it when airlines use plain language,
so to speak. I never even thought about that. I guess I'm just too focused on this kind of thing. But, hey, your flight is leaving at 6:10 p.m., is a much more it hits the brain pan faster and it is absorbed better than saying, flight, 6:29 leaves gate 6B at 6:10 p.m., which is kind of, very cold and distant.
Right.
So anyway, we found in our research that using that plain language with an AIN, plain language, those are higher rated. And the other thing that's happening, and actually the airlines have done actually a very good job of this so far, which is what we call the halo effects of pricing. So the thing about pricing is, and I'm, also from the University of Chicago, and if that means something to anybody who studies economics, I'm very much a free market kind of guy.
It meant something to me because they wouldn't accept me to their program. So,
yeah, I had a choice between Northwestern and Chicago, and I took Chicago, and I don't know if I should have regretted that decision or not. But anyway, it's a good place to be from. While you're there, you wonder what the heck you're doing to yourself. But anyway, there isn't any perfect information on pricing. This is specifically true of airlines. Nobody really has an idea of what it costs to go from JFK to LAX. They have a rough idea, but is $425 too much or too little, or is that cheap or expensive? They just kind of look at it in comparison to everything else. So they kind of learn the prices as they're looking at, today how we shop for things. We go online, we get a list. And that list goes from low price to high price because we still have a little bit of a commodity business here in the airline business. But we've seen in our research, and I think I've mentioned this previously on your show, that Southwest Airlines has a great halo about how well priced they are. They seem to be very cheap. Even though you look at any kind of standardized segmentation analysis, segmentation being the standard 1,700 mile flight, their prices are very little difference between Delta, American, United, and Southwest. But Southwest wins that, as far as people believing they have a lower price because of the halo effect that bags fly free, and we don't charge you $200 to change your ticket. Now, the airline industry has done a great job of saying, you know what, we're going to waive all of that. Now, that right there for the big ones, for Delta, American, United, that's a couple $100 million decision right there. But it was the right thing to do. And if they can continue that into this recovery period, they're going to adopt some of that halo of we treated you fairly when you most needed it. And those little extra fees really drive dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
Right. We'll get into the reason why they do it is because it's the way we shop for airline prices these days. And you got to be on that first page. And that's why there's such low prices that have, things added onto them. The disaggregation, I think we talked about before, disaggregation of the fare itself is just a reaction to how we're shopping and how we choose an airline flight to begin with.
Yeah, and I always say there's two types of decisions you have to make and decision that makes itself. That decision made itself, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, you're charging people for changing their ticket or charging people for luggage at this point. I mean, that I would never use your airline again. I mean, I'm a Delta guy, and I would stop using Delta tomorrow if they started nickel and diming me or continue to nickel and dime me. And so I think that those decisions make themselves. What I like to see is, I like when I just saw an insurance commercial. I can't remember which one it was. I think it might have been Allstate. I'm not sure. And it said, if you're having trouble paying your bill this month or next month, please call us. We're going to help you. Like, that meant something to me for people because I know if I was a Geico guy and I was having trouble paying my bills, I'm going to remember that commercial when they come at it. I might not change my insurance right now because everything's so up in the air. But when I came out of this, I'm going to change to go to that company because my company didn't do that. They did. And again, I don't know insurance company. I shouldn't have mentioned insurance company. I don't know what it was, but that made something. So are customers really, again, I'm not an expert in this field, but are guests and customers, what do you think their memory will be on things like that?
Well, it won't be as dramatic as a lot of people would like to think, simply because we're in a kind of a fog. We're in the fog of war at the moment, and people are going to, there's enough people doing this, suspension of fees type of thing that it's going to be hard to remember. But what will happen is just exactly what you just said, which is if they didn't do it, you would remember that. So if you haven't done it and you don't do it in the near future, that is going to be a black mark. So you're just kind of, table stakes now is to waive those fees. If you don't do it, you're going to really set yourself up for a lot of backlash. People will remember that more than they remember the positives of suspension and waiving of rules.
Right.
Of fees.
And I do want to point out to one of those big insurance companies out there, maybe now is not the time to run that that commercial with the world's greatest high five that's out there. I just saw that this weekend, and it stuck out for all the wrong reasons. I got a question from you from Matt Ward over here. He wants to know how hoteliers in the future can obtain better guest feedback for stays. What should they be asking, and how should they maybe be gathering that data?
Well, that actually is a great question, because every once in a while, and you guys have maybe asked me this before, but we don't ask about safety anywhere in the air, on airlines, in rental cars, or in hotels, simply because it's a given. You're not going to get on an unsafe aircraft. You'd be crazy to. We talked a little bit about this, with this, with the 737 MAX situation. But airlines and we don't ask the question because it's 100%. Of course, the aircraft is safe. I wouldn't have flown on it. Right. I wouldn't have stayed in that hotel room if I thought I was going to die of COVID-19. So we don't ask that question. But what you can do, the thing is that you've got to, as we were talking earlier, reassure, establish that one-to-one kind of relationship, which will create what we call true believers. Those are people who have an emotional connection to a brand, or what we call true believers. They look forward to staying at the hotel. They're proud to be staying at that hotel. They know the hotel has done the things right for them in the past. And those three things, plus a couple others, are what we call that true believer scale. And the more true believers you can create, the more likely they are to forgive you of anything that goes wrong.
That's right.
And we see this, at least in my side of the business, in JetBlue the most, where JetBlue does a great job. Southwest is also up there too, but JetBlue is just slightly ahead of Southwest. And they create that enthusiasm that they treat the passenger correctly. And the reason why they do that is because of the boarding process. And, if we've another half hour to explain to why Southwest actually has that, because that's the way they were founded. They were very egalitarian. Other airlines are trying to separate you and reward you for being a frequent flyer, which of course makes them more money in the long term. But Southwest just decided never to get into that game. But it's that kind of feeling that I'm a valued person. I'm not any different than the guy standing or the woman sitting next to me. We're all kind of in this together, and that's the way it should be in America. It's kind of a Superman type of situation. But anyway, those true believers forgive you when the flight is late. If you look at JetBlue, their performance on time, their OTP, on-time performance, is not that great. But they are really never really knocked that much compared to other ones, such as the bigs, Delta, United, American. When they're late, people are irate. When JetBlue's late, that's not so bad, because JetBlue gives them the feeling that, hey, we're trying, we're here for you. And then plus the other thing, I believe we mentioned this before on your show, is that JetBlue has great in-flight entertainment. Right. So if you're 15, 20 minutes late, you're still watching Game of Thrones or, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. And so the 15 minutes goes by much quicker than when you're on United Airlines or Delta, where you're not using the IFE as much as you would be on JetBlue.
Right. So Mrs. Maisel, good show. Watch that. You don't only have to be stuck on that. And Anthony, I want to know, are you down with OTP?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's you're showing your age there, Glenn.
I know. Shows the gray hair. All right. Before we wrap this up, Anthony, you got any more questions? I'm feeling like we're pretty good. I'm feeling pretty satisfied with.
I know you spoke about this when I had to go take care of my little problem I just was dealing with. Where's the mind? I mean, you explained where the mindset of the customers right now. Right now, they're basically wait and see and in shock. 6 months from now, short-term memory, or people are not going to shake hands and.
Well, all evidence is correct that your observation is correct. Short-term memory.
People are.
Nope.
Yeah, they'll learn from daily experience that nothing is going to happen to them. We brag about the travel industry being the safest way to conduct yourself. You have more of a chance of dying and getting into your car than you would if getting on a plane.
Boss, they don't want to go.
Yeah, the more often this happens, you just get the reinforcement that, hey, nothing bad is going to happen. The plane isn't going to get hijacked. Oh, and I'm not going to, nobody's around me is dying of COVID-19 anymore. And we will soon forget about it. Everybody's forgot about the Spanish flu and H1N1 and Legionnaire's disease. I haven't even thought about Legionnaire's disease until this show.
Right. Good point. Yay, short-term memory.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Mike, thank you so much for being here. Tell us a little bit out how we could find you or how we could find JD Power. Any good sort of shameless plug you got?
Oh yeah, well, jdpower.com/business. That's where you're going to find us, and we're the travel group. And you can see a lot of interesting research right there. And you can do a search on Google for JD Power News, and you'll find a lot of different things that JD Power has on this topic and everything else.
Beautiful. Well, I want to thank you for being here, Michael. I'd love to have you back again when you have more information for one of our data shows. That'd be awesome. So let's say goodbye to Mike, and I'll wrap up the show with you.
Thank you,
Anthony.
Michael.
Thank you for being here. So Anthony, check this out. Ooh. Text hotel to 66866 to get more great content with us. That's hotel to 66866 to learn how to do all this banner stuff. Isn't that fun? Got a little overlay there. Both of our logos going on over there.
Yeah, there's not enough going on that screen.
I know. Well, I want to be like all the news networks, so I'm going to try to have 800 things scrolling across the screen at once. That's my goal for here. And then I'm stalling because I can't figure out how to take
get rid of that stuff.
I was stalling because I couldn't figure out how to get it off. And meanwhile, text 66866 to the hotel to 66866. Any final words, Anthony?
Yeah. This show's becoming important, not for us, but for the viewers. I'm getting a lot of compliments and comments. And
we lost them. Hello. Well, I will say this show is.
And can you hear me now?
Please start that over again. You said it's becoming important.
It's becoming important, not for us, but for the people watching it, because the guests we're having on, they're talking about the economics. They're talking about what the guests are thinking. And so if you have someone that wants to be on the show that really can give us information we can't get anywhere else, please let us know. But it's today was really enlightening to me. I think people are still pretty sober and pretty thinking about this and a little scared still. But I think a little bit we're getting away from the terror. And I think the more information we have that's not based on a political view, but based on facts, I know it's helping me. And I hope it's helping our audience. And your lighting looks fantastic today, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I really wanted to accentuate the gray today, make it just sparkle. Yeah. But Anthony, I'm thinking, because we're doing all these serious shows, maybe Friday during our Feel Good Friday show, we could have some booze or something like that, or have some sort of late night happy hour or something like that we could put together.
Maybe one night we'll do a LinkedIn Live or a Facebook Live happy hour. I think that would be a good idea. This Friday, can you hear me?
I can.
This Friday, we have two really great guests. Did you confirm those? Did you confirm those?
I'm working on all of that right now.
Okay,
so I probably could have done it over the weekend, but I was a little slow at getting stuff done.
No. I'm that's fine. I think you needed a day or two. But the two guests that I asked to come on are incredible people, and two of my I don't have heroes, but they really are my heroes. I love these guys. So please get in touch with them. Let's confirm those. Who do we have coming up tomorrow, my friend Glenn?
It is a great question. I lost my list. Hold on one second. Let me grab it.
Okay, I'll keep it going because we don't need Glenn. This is the Anthony Mercuri Show, and welcome. Oh, he's back.
Screw you. I'm threatened. I came right back. Tomorrow, we got Chris Green returning from Chesapeake Hospitality to share with us what he's up to. We're doing having him come on a couple of times a week in order to share his stories in real time about what the CEO of a management company is experiencing and doing and processing and how he could get out of the situation. As well, Ray March, the CFO with Pebblebrook. That's sure to be a great show.
Ooh. I'm excited about that.
I know. On Wednesday, we got Jagruti Panwala. She's the chairwoman of AHOA checking in, as well as Cindy Herzog, the EVP of operations with Smash Hotels. And our friend Sean Worker, who I'm working on a book project with right now, is going to come on to talk about stuff. He's a former CEO in the hospitality sphere and is very involved in working with companies behind the scenes now. And then we're going to see what the vendors are up to on Thursday with the great show put together with our good friends over at Almo Hospitality. Anthony, any final words before we let these good people get on with their day?
I'm writing a book as we speak. And did I tell you the name of the chapter I'm writing currently?
Why I hate my podcast partner? Is that what it is?
No, I interrupt this book for a pandemic, and we're writing a chapter on personal branding, because the whole book's about personal branding and kind of what I'm seeing, how people are showing up and not showing up. So I'm watching you closely. You may wind up in the book. Also, please go to Hospitality Success, Hospitality Strong on Facebook. We have 500 members right now. It's free. It's complimentary. We're all talking to each other. So Hospitality Success on Facebook. Please go there. Please sign up. I will say, if we don't get your email, we will not bring you on into the group, because we need your email to give you the newsletter based on the facts that we're getting. So we're not selling you anything. We want to have this newsletter where everybody can learn. So if you sign up, please drop your email. I will not use it for any advertising, I promise. Go to Hospitality Success on Facebook. And I now have my own LinkedIn page. We're going to figure out what we're going to do on that LinkedIn page very soon. We'll probably test it out sometime today or tomorrow. And at 3:00 today, I will be on Facebook Live with Jeremy Pinkerton, who's my partner and an incredible human being, and she's a revenue manager. And we're going to talk about not what we're going to look at the next 10 days, 15 days, 20 days, but what can you expect in 30, 60, 90 days. And I'll be talking a little bit about the forecast I just heard from STR, and we'll talk about how you should be setting your goals and your rates for 90 days from now. So, and then you can ask us any questions, and we'll answer anything. And what color is that sweater, my friend Glenn Houseman?
This one is more of a beige-ish type of a sweater, and I promise everybody, as soon as the weather starts to warm up a little bit, I will get the collared shirts back going and stuff like that. But it's so freezing right now. The colder it gets, the harder it is for me to type and keep track of all the stuff that's going on over here. So thanks for your patience, but I did shave for you this morning, Anthony, because I wanted to look a little baby soft for you, because I know how much you appreciate that.
I shaved this morning as well. So you can find me anywhere you want to be on the internet at Anthony Hotels. And as I get better at technology, I'll be live. Matter of fact, this Saturday night, about 8:00, I went live, and I didn't take any questions about the virus. I just took questions about my TV career, Hotel Impossible. So you'll start seeing me pop up from time to time on live, not just talking about the serious stuff that we're dealing with, but also just you can ask me questions. So, Glenn, thank you very much. And
thank you.
I'll see you on the other side, baby.
Yeah, thanks for always being a great co-host. And we'll see all of you folks on Anthony's Facebook Live page at 3 p.m., where I'm going to be sitting back and relaxing and watching him do all the hard work. All right, guys, we'll see you here tomorrow at 12:00 Eastern Daylight Time. Until then, have a great day, and wishing you lots of success and ways to get through as we find a way out to the other side. Thanks. See you tomorrow.